The diplomatic station of Virelia floated in calm orbit above a bright, golden planet, looking like a shining jewel among the stars. Princess Seralith Vire arrived in the Grand Council chamber with a graceful step, wearing a long silver gown that shimmered in the starlight. Her expression was calm and proud, as was expected from a member of the oldest ruling bloodline in the Virelian Empire. Her people were ancient, powerful, and respected across the galaxy. For thousands of years, they believed themselves above all newcomers. Today, they were preparing to meet one such newcomer that had recently surprised the galaxy with its sudden rise into interstellar politics: humanity. Seralith had been told that the humans were ambitious and driven, but she had no reason to be impressed. Many young species entered space with loud voices and high hopes, only to fade into nothing within a generation. The Virelians had seen this story many times before. She expected the humans to be the same. The princess walked to her ceremonial seat as nobles and council members rose in respect. She sat with calm grace, her silver-gold eyes studying the entrance of the chamber. Soon, the humans arrived. Captain Marcus Hale led the delegation. Unlike many alien leaders who often covered themselves in layers of armor or ceremonial jewelry, he arrived in a pressed navy uniform with small, shining silver buttons. He walked confidently but without arrogance. Behind him came diplomats, specialists, and translators. They formed a straight line before the council seats and waited quietly, showing discipline and confidence. The council watched them with polite but obvious curiosity. It was rare that a young race earned a meeting with the Virelian ruling house. Seralith tapped a small crystal panel embedded in her chair arm. Soft blue light spread across the room as the official beginning of the peace summit was recorded. The princess rose with slow, elegant movement. Everyone in the chamber fell silent. Even the sound of ventilation faded beneath the strong presence of the moment. Her voice carried smoothly across the room, calm and perfectly controlled. She introduced herself with the traditional Virelian royal title, which was long, complex, and filled with old tones and honorific markers. It was a name spoken in a dialect so ancient that even many Virelians struggled with it. For thousands of years, no species had repeated the full name correctly. Most races could not even remember half of it. Some could not pronounce any of it at all. That was the point. A Virelian royal name was not only a title. It was a reminder that the Virelians had history deeper than the root systems of entire worlds. When other species stumbled, it confirmed the ancient belief that no newcomer could stand equal to a Virelian noble. Seralith did not expect anything different today. Her expression remained serene and patient as she waited for the predictable human struggle. Captain Marcus Hale listened without looking nervous. His eyes did not dart around in confusion, nor did he whisper to his translators. Instead, he stood with hands folded behind his back, showing confidence and respect. When the princess finished speaking, a few Virelian nobles gave small, polite smiles. They were waiting for the human failure that would follow. Some imagined the human captain would give a short bow, offer a clumsy greeting, and humorously avoid repeating her name. Instead, Marcus spoke. He repeated the princess's name completely, perfectly, and clearly. The entire chamber froze. Seralith blinked once, her composure shaken for the first time in the memory of anyone present. The court nobles stopped breathing. An elder counselor dropped the stylus he had been holding. The chamber lights hummed in the silence. The human captain had not only repeated the impossible name, but had also included every subtle tone, every ancient breath sound, every archaic, honorific marker. It was as if someone had played back a flawless royal archive recording. Marcus continued speaking in calm, measured Virelian. He thanked the princess for allowing humanity to stand in the presence of the ancient empire, and stated that humanity wished for peaceful cooperation built on understanding and respect. His voice was steady and sincere. A few nobles exchanged shocked looks. One leaned forward, trying to find the hidden audio device he assumed must be playing a translation. But there was none. Marcus had memorized the name. He had trained. He was speaking from knowledge, not technology. Princess Sarilith found herself speechless. That in itself was historic. She had been raised from birth to remain calm and untouchable, to never show surprise or uncertainty. She finally studied Marcus with new eyes. This man had not come here blindly. He had taken the time to learn a language older than his nation's space presence. He had shown effort, dedication, and respect. It was something the Varelians did not expect from a young race. When she recovered, she addressed him again, her tone careful. She asked how he and his team had mastered the language in such a short time. The translator team behind Marcus did not speak. The captain answered on his own. He told her that humanity spent 6 months studying Varelian culture and language before the summit. Humans did not want to arrive unprepared or disrespectful. They believed that if someone invited them to speak, they should speak with understanding. He explained that his people believed in earning respect rather than expecting it. Sarilith took in the words and thought about them. She had met many leaders who treated diplomacy as a chance to show power, but this man had taken more care learning her name than most took learning entire treaties. He did not boast, and he did not act superior. He simply respected the moment. It reminded her of old stories from Varelian history, from a time before the empire grew so large. Stories of young leaders who had something to prove and worked until no one could deny their right to be heard. The council members whispered quietly among themselves. Some were impressed. Some felt uneasy. For so long, aliens had come to Varelia seeking introductions, favors, or protection. It was rare to see someone who came bearing earned preparation instead of empty compliments. Marcus finished his introduction and waited quietly, giving the council time to react. His calm posture told the room that whether the Varelians respected humanity or not, the humans already respected the Varelians. That balance of confidence and humility was unusual. Sarilith realized she could no longer view humanity as she had before. They were not a loud, reckless species seeking attention. They were a species that worked hard when the galaxy expected nothing from them. She felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not discomfort, but interest. Curiosity. The galaxy changed slowly most of the time, but sometimes it changed in a single moment. She wondered if this meeting would become one of those moments. The princess resumed control of the room with a calm wave of her hand. The council quieted. She declared that the meeting would proceed with full seriousness and respect. For the first time, she looked at humanity not as a newcomer, but as a potential equal. And for the first time in the long history of her royal lineage, someone had spoken her name and proved worthy of standing before her. The summit had just begun. But already, everything was different. The shock of Captain Marcus Hale, repeating Princess Sarilith's name, did not fade quickly. Long after the human finished speaking, there was a silence in the Varelian council chamber that felt heavy, as if the galaxy itself had paused in surprise. The crystal panels in the room continued their soft glowing pulse, recording history without emotion. But everyone in the chamber knew something important had just happened. Something that had not happened for thousands of years. Princess Sarilith sat gracefully, but inside she felt something unfamiliar. She was usually calm and sure of her thoughts, but now her mind was racing. The humans were not acting like a young race overwhelmed by their surroundings. Marcus stood with confidence and quiet strength, like a commander who did not need to prove himself. He had arrived in a palace ruled by one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy, and had behaved as though he belonged there. The counselors began to whisper among themselves in low voices. Some sounded impressed. Others sounded troubled. A few older nobles looked uneasy, as if they had witnessed something dangerous. The Varelian Empire was used to being at the top of the political structure of the galaxy. They were not sure how to react when someone from a younger civilization showed knowledge and discipline equal to their own. Marcus noticed the shift in the room but remained calm. His expression did not change, and his hands stayed folded behind his back. It was clear he had trained for moments like this, and he was not going to let nerves show. The other humans behind him stood in disciplined silence. They followed his example, and their stillness sent a message even without speaking. Humanity could stand united. Sarilith took a slow breath and addressed the council, asking them to continue with the agenda. She tried to sound as composed as she always did, but a few council members noticed the slight change in her voice. It was not fear. It was something else: interest, maybe even respect. She turned her gaze back to Marcus and asked him about humanity's journey. She wanted to know how a species with only a short time in space could master such difficult knowledge. Marcus answered in the same calm tone as before. He explained that humanity had learned to survive and grow by studying everything around them. On their home world, they never had an easy path. They evolved in a world full of danger, competition, and challenges. They had to work for every advancement. That mindset had become a part of their culture. Humans did not sit still and wait for things to improve. They forced improvement through effort. The princess listened closely. Her golden eyes focused on him. She could sense the honesty in his words. There was no arrogance, no pride, only a simple truth spoken plainly. Marcus explained that when humanity discovered that the Virelian Empire agreed to meet them, the entire Earth Union government treated it as the most important diplomatic opportunity in history. Human linguists, historians, and technologists all worked together to learn everything they could. They studied Virelian speech patterns, old records, cultural notes, and even ancient ceremonial scripts. They did not want to show up and ask for respect. They wanted to earn it. Sarilith found herself believing him. Some counselors did not want to believe it. One elder stood up and said that the humans might have used recording technology or secret implants to repeat the royal name. Marcus simply shook his head. He invited the counselor to test him on any part of the language, old or new. The room watched with fascination as the elder counselor asked Marcus several questions in increasingly old variations of the language, some of which were not spoken for over 1,000 years. Marcus answered each one correctly, and in correct structure. The counselor sat down again, silent and humbled. The humans had trained hard. That much was clear. Princess Sarilith addressed Marcus again and asked a direct question. Why had humans tried so hard? Humanity was young. They had no long history, no ancient star empire, no noble bloodline. Why did they think it was worth preparing so much for this meeting? Marcus looked her in the eyes and answered simply. He said that humans had always been told that the galaxy was full of species stronger, wiser, and older than them. If humanity wanted to stand among such civilizations, they had to prove they belonged. Effort was the only way. They did not want special treatment. They wanted a fair chance to speak. Sarilith felt something change again. She had lived her entire life surrounded by courtiers who assumed greatness was their birthright. But this man stood in front of her representing a people who believed greatness had to be earned. There was dignity in that belief, and it stirred something deep in her, something she had not felt in a long time. One council member leaned forward and asked if humans were prepared for the responsibilities of joining the interstellar community. Marcus answered that humans were not perfect and never claimed to be. Humanity made mistakes and sometimes failed, but they always tried again. That was what made them human. The council chamber fell silent. Some nobles exchanged thoughtful glances. They had not expected such humility combined with confidence. After a moment, Sarilith decided to test the humans further. She asked Marcus about Earth's early history in space. She expected vague answers or diplomatic language, but Marcus spoke honestly. He told the story of humanity's first struggle with space travel, how they had launched their first satellites with machines that barely worked. He explained how humans built their early stations with limited technology, learning through trial and error rather than wisdom inherited from ancient ancestors. He spoke of how humanity started their journey surrounded by doubt and skepticism. But despite everything, humans kept trying, failing, and rising again. That alone had carried them to this moment. The princess observed something as she listened. Marcus did not speak about humans as if they were superior. He spoke as if humanity were still learning, still growing, still striving. And yet, that was exactly what made the humans impressive. They did not think they had reached their peak, which meant they could still climb higher. The counselors began to see humanity differently. The Varelians, for thousands of years, had grown used to their own reputation. But humans were new, unpredictable, and determined. Some nobles whispered to each other, wondering if this species could challenge the old galactic order. Not with war, but with effort and persistence. Marcus finished speaking and again waited quietly, never interrupting anyone. Sarilith looked at him for a long moment. She understood that this summit was no longer a routine diplomatic meeting. It was a turning point. A moment when the galaxy had to recognize humanity, not as newcomers asking for attention, but as a people who were ready to stand among the stars with their heads held high. She finally addressed Marcus again, not as a superior speaking to a junior envoy but as one leader speaking to another. She acknowledged humanity's preparation and sincerity, and she thanked the captain for proving that effort and respect could achieve more than titles and age. That small shift carried great meaning. Varelian rulers did not give compliments easily. Marcus bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement, saying nothing more. The atmosphere in the chamber felt different now. Walls that had once separated ancient power from young ambition were no longer so thick. Possibility had entered the room. Even the soft crystal panels seemed to glow brighter, as if the station itself understood that the galaxy had changed. Sarilith leaned back in her chair, her expression calm again but her thoughts racing. She wondered what the next steps of this meeting would bring. She wondered how much more the humans had prepared. And for the first time in many years, she felt excitement. The sense that something new and important was happening, and she was at the center of it. The council meeting continued, but everyone present knew that the real event had already happened. A single moment, a young species speaking an ancient name perfectly, had shaken the assumptions of an empire older than history. The summit was only beginning. But the galaxy would never forget this day. The summit continued for hours. But even after the formal discussions ended, Princess Sarilith could not quiet her thoughts. The humans had come prepared in a way no one expected. During the short recess, council members spoke privately in corners of the chamber, their voices filled with surprise and speculation. The Varelian Empire had met hundreds of species over thousands of years, but never one that arrived with such effort, humility, and discipline. Humans had changed the atmosphere of the council, and everyone could feel it. When the next session was postponed for the following morning, the council dismissed. Delegations returned to their assigned rooms on the diplomatic station, and the long hallways filled with quiet conversation and the soft hum of hovering transit platforms. Princess Sarilith did not return to her private quarters. Instead, she made a different decision. She walked deeper into the station, toward an ancient archive wing rarely visited by modern officials. The guards at the archive doors stepped aside the moment they saw her. Inside, the air felt old, cold, and filled with history. The archive was built from white crystal walls, thousands of years old, humming faintly with energy. Light screens floated around her, each storing records from countless ages. She touched a glowing blue panel, and the screens rearranged themselves into a search interface. In the silence of the chamber, she began looking up Earth. Her curiosity came from a place she could not fully explain. For most of her life, other species had been predictable. They entered space, showed their pride, negotiated trade rights, and usually left disappointed. But humans were different. They had done the impossible already. They had spoken her ancient name perfectly, something no one had done since the very first monarch of her line. And they did it not with arrogance, but with work. She wanted to understand how a young world had raised people like that. The archive found the first record. It was a small file from nearly 100 years ago, written by a Virelian scouting vessel that visited the Sol system before humanity had left their own planet. Back then, humans had not yet traveled beyond their home world. They were classified as a fragile developing species, struggling with internal problems. The scout report recommended no diplomatic contact. It stated that humanity would likely destroy itself before evolving far enough to be relevant in galactic politics. Sarilith read the words in silence. She knew such reports were common, but something about this one unsettled her. Because the report had been wrong. Humanity had not destroyed itself. Humanity had grown, improved, and pushed forward, until one day, they reached space. They did not quit. They did not collapse. They survived. She scrolled through later records. There were more. Reports from unmanned Virelian probes, watching humanity build primitive satellites, then basic space stations, then their first jump drives. Every report underestimated humanity. Some were even dismissive. And yet, humans kept climbing. Sarilith sat in the archives, reading page after page. She saw how humanity solved problems through trial and error. She saw how they developed new technologies without guidance from older civilizations. They pushed forward with only their own determination. Their progress had not relied on ancient inheritance or cosmic advantages. It had grown from their own hands, minds, and resilience. The princess leaned back and thought quietly. In her own empire, people believed their greatness came from age and tradition. Humans were proving that greatness could also come from movement, growth, and ambition. She could feel a new respect forming inside her. She also sensed something else. A warning. If humans kept advancing at the rate shown in the records, they might become one of the strongest forces in the galaxy in only a few centuries. Not because they claimed power, but because they worked for it. While the princess studied the past, another scene was unfolding elsewhere in the station. Captain Marcus Hale and his human team had returned to their temporary quarters. The rooms were simple but comfortable, with clear walls that showed the stars outside. Marcus gathered his team around a large holographic table. He told them that the summit was going as well as they could have hoped, but also warned them to stay sharp. A successful first impression did not guarantee success. Diplomacy was not a single moment. It was a long road filled with risks. He assigned new tasks. Some would research council members and try to understand their political positions. Others would practice answers for the next day's discussions. A few specialists were instructed to analyze the station's old political protocols. Humans needed to anticipate every angle if they wanted to stand on equal terms with the Virelian Empire. While the team worked, Marcus opened a secure folder. Inside were their own intelligence reports. Humanity had learned many things about the Virelian Empire during their preparation. But even they had missed one detail, that the Virelians had once visited Earth before humans reached space. Their scouts had studied Earth and dismissed it. Marcus realized that this fact could either cause offense or become a powerful diplomatic point. If Sarilith had already discovered this information, it meant she was looking closely at humanity. Marcus did not think this was a bad sign. If anything, it showed that the princess was taking humans seriously. Back in the archives, Sarilith continued deeper into the historical records. She opened a large file from 200 Virelian years ago. It showed a detailed analysis of Earth's early development, marking humanity as a high-risk species, unpredictable, emotional, conflict-driven. The file recommended close monitoring because humans might one day become aggressive. The princess read this carefully. She could understand how the scouts reached that conclusion. Humans were intense. Their emotions ran deep. But that intensity also gave them strength. It had fueled their rise. The princess remembered Marcus's words in the council chamber. He had said humans were not perfect. They failed often. but they stood up again. She wondered how many Virelians could say the same. Her people had not faced true hardship in centuries. They had grown comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Humanity reminded her of something vital: the hunger to improve. She began reviewing cultural data next: human literature, recorded speeches, old world history, and audiovisual files. She saw humans fighting against impossible odds. Humans building from ruins. Humans reaching for the stars, with machines held together by willpower and ambition. Their story was filled with mistakes and tragedies, but also victories born from effort. Humanity did not win because fate chose them. Humanity won because they kept moving. Sarilith closed the final file and sat in silence. The archive chamber lights cast a pale reflection on her gown, and the ancient walls hummed quietly around her. She felt a growing certainty. The Council would have to rethink its old understanding of the galaxy. Humanity was not another short-lived civilization that would disappear in a century. If given time, humanity might rise high enough to stand beside the greatest empires ever known. She considered her father, the Emperor. He was wise, but cautious, and he did not change his mind easily. Yet she knew that he, too, respected strength and dedication. If she presented this information correctly, he would listen. A soft sound broke the silence. The archive door opened, and a royal attendant entered with a small bow. The next session of the summit was being scheduled. Sarilith stood and gave a quiet nod. As she walked out of the archive, one thought stayed with her. Humanity had not been given a place in the galaxy. Humanity had carved one for itself. The princess wondered what the council meeting tomorrow would bring, and she found that she looked forward to discovering it. The next morning, the Virelian diplomatic station woke to a calm golden sunrise shining across the atmosphere of the planet below. Tiny transport crafts glided between docking arms like silent silver insects. The council chambers were being prepared again, and ambassadors from many species moved through the halls with calm voices and quiet footsteps. But beneath the peaceful surface, something dangerous was already in motion. While Princess Sarilith finished preparing her morning reports, a small group of Virelian radicals moved through the lower maintenance levels of the station. They wore standard worker uniforms and carried small maintenance tools that hid compact disruption devices. These radicals believed that the Virelian Empire should never accept humanity as equals. They saw humans as a threat, a species that could rise quickly and possibly challenge the old order. To them, the idea of letting humans sit at the council table was unthinkable. Their plan was simple: create a disaster that would destroy the summit and force the council to reconsider peace. They headed toward a structural control room deep in the service tunnels. Once inside, they planted their disruptor modules near a power routing panel that helped stabilize the station's orbit. If the system failed, the entire diplomatic station would slowly drift downward toward the planet. It would not be instant destruction, but it would be fast enough to force evacuation and end the summit before the humans could finish securing respect. The saboteurs activated the devices, which began quietly corrupting system data. Then, they slipped away unseen. At the same time, Captain Marcus Hale and the human delegation walked through a long glass corridor on their way to the morning session. The stars stretched outside like a dark sea. They were discussing strategy calmly when suddenly the floor trembled. It was a tiny shake at first, then a stronger one. Warning lights flashed on the corridor walls, and a deep alarm began to sound. Purple emergency lights filled the passage. Virelian attendants in ceremonial uniforms froze in confusion, while some visitors looked around in fear. Marcus immediately issued orders to his team. They had trained for emergency situations just like this. One of his officers checked the emergency readouts on his wrist device and reported that the station's orbit control had gone offline. Another officer explained that the backup systems were not responding. It meant the station was beginning to descend toward the planet's atmosphere. Marcus did not hesitate. He ordered his team to split up. Half would help maintain order among civilians, while the others would seek access to engineering systems to try to help stabilize the station. His officers moved instantly. They spread out, guiding panicking visitors into side corridors and calming crowds. Humans were not in command of the station, but in moments of crisis, leadership did not need permission. Princess Sarilith felt the tremor and stood immediately. Her personal guard urged her to return to her private evacuation shuttle, but she refused. She walked directly to the main council control center instead, choosing to face the crisis rather than hide from it. When she entered, engineers and officers were already shouting reports. The sabotage was detected, but the damage was spreading, and the automated repair systems could not keep up. Removing the damage would require manual work in dangerous parts of the station. Sarilith demanded a situation update. The chief engineer explained that if the orbit continued to decay at this rate, the station would fall within 30 minutes. They were sending emergency crews to the power routing chambers, but the access corridors were narrow, difficult to move through, and the damage was increasing faster than their teams could handle. Sarilith made a choice. She ordered all nearby delegates and visitors to begin evacuation protocols, but she herself refused to leave yet. She intended to stay until the situation was fully understood. Suddenly, the control room doors opened, and Marcus Hale entered. His uniform was scuffed from moving through emergency corridors, but his eyes were steady. The Varelian guards hesitated, unsure whether a human should be in the control center during crisis, but Sarilith raised her hand to signal he was allowed. Marcus quickly reviewed the holographic map projected in the room. He saw the damage spreading through the power routing system. He asked the engineer how many maintenance crew were already in the tunnels. The engineer replied that only 2 small teams were nearby, and none were close enough to reach the major failure area in time. Marcus turned to Sarilith and asked permission to send human engineers. She stared at him for a long second. Her people had long believed humans were inexperienced and unprepared for large-scale emergencies, but she had seen enough already to know that these humans were not ordinary. She gave permission, and Marcus immediately sent orders through his comms. Human engineers, technicians, and officers ran through twisting emergency tunnels, looking for access hatches. They did not panic. They did not wait. They acted with urgency and determination. Several Varelian workers joined them after seeing their resolve. For perhaps the first time, humans and Varelians worked side by side without hesitation. Inside the lower tunnels, sparks flew as systems overloaded. Artificial gravity flickered in some areas, making walking difficult. One of the corridors began filling with smoke from overheating circuits. Marcus's second-in-command ordered his team to break open a secondary maintenance passage, which allowed them to bypass a blocked corridor and reach the failing power regulator. 2 humans and a Varelian technician crawled into a maintenance shaft barely large enough for 1 person. The Varelian's hands shook, but the humans directed him calmly, showing him where to shut down the corrupted feeds. The disruptor devices pulsed dangerously. One technician pulled out a portable interface and routed the power around the damaged area. The Varelian tech watched in shock. He had never seen such quick, independent decision-making before. Humans were trained to act without waiting for perfect instructions. They made decisions in the field, and they made them fast. Back in the control center, the orbit indicator changed from deep red to bright orange. Sarilith felt hope return. Marcus gave new orders and requested a direct connection to the core systems. The engineers hesitated, but Sarilith authorized it. Marcus's technicians uploaded emergency stabilization code and manually forced the system to restart. The lights flickered. The station's thrusters fired weakly, then stabilized. The orbit decay slowed. The chief engineer stared at the readings in disbelief. The station had stopped falling. Sarilith exhaled slowly, then looked at Marcus. Even with danger still around them, she could see the truth clearly. When crisis struck, the humans did not think about pride or fear. They moved. They acted. They saved lives without waiting for recognition. More reports arrived. The sabotage devices were found. Council guards captured 2 saboteurs trying to escape. Their intentions were confirmed. They wanted the summit destroyed. Sarilith's expression turned cold. The council had to deal with that later. But right now, something more important was happening. Marcus stood calmly, his uniform dirty and scorched, his breathing steady. His officers were still helping restore full stability. The control crew watched him with new eyes. In only a few hours, he had earned something rare in Virelian society. Genuine trust. Sarilith understood that the summit had changed completely. Humanity had not come to ask for respect. Humanity had come ready to prove they deserved it. And they had done so not with words, but with action during the worst possible moment. When the alarms finally shut off and the station returned to normal operation, Sarilith addressed Marcus directly. She told him that the Virelian Empire would remember what the humans had done today. Humans were not just ambassadors. They were people who risked themselves to protect others. They had acted with honor, even when they owed Virelians nothing. Marcus bowed his head slightly, saying only that humans helped because it was the right thing to do. Sarilith realized that this simple answer said more about humanity than any speech in the council chambers ever could. The crisis had shown the truth. Humanity was not a threat because they wanted power. Humanity was a potential power because they acted when others stood still. And the galaxy would not forget it. The station slowly returned to normal over the next few hours. Engineers worked through the damaged sections, alarms were silenced, and control systems were restored to full power. Passengers and diplomats who had been rushing toward escape shuttles returned to their halls in an exhausted but relieved state. Many of them were still whispering about the unbelievable scene they had witnessed. Humans rushing into danger to save Virelians they barely knew. Princess Sarilith stood in the center of the main control room and looked out through the large observation window. The golden planet below continued to shine peacefully, unaware that a diplomatic disaster had almost occurred above its atmosphere. She knew that the station, and everyone on it, owed their safety to the humans. Without Marcus Hale and his team, the council would be mourning hundreds of lost lives. Perhaps even her own. She thought about her ancestors. They had built a civilization of strength and knowledge, but they had long forgotten what it felt like to fight for survival. Humans had reminded her of that basic truth: strength was not only ancient or inherited. Strength could also be earned through effort, determination, and a willingness to act. She had seen with her own eyes that humans did not simply talk about courage, they lived it. Marcus Hale and his team remained in the control room for final system checks. His cheeks were marked with dirt from climbing through maintenance shafts, his uniform scorched in places. And yet he did not look tired. He looked calm, focused, and ready to continue the summit as if nothing had happened. Sarilith found that admirable. When the system reports came back completely stable, Sarilith gave the official instruction to reopen the council chamber for an emergency session. The council members returned quickly, some still shaken, others deep in thought. Many had been present during past diplomatic crises, but very few had ever seen outsiders save a Virelian station before. It was not a minor act. It was historic. As the council took their seats, Marcus approached quietly and stood in the same position he had occupied the previous day. The chamber felt different this time. The mood was heavier, more serious, more respectful. There were fewer whispers and more attentive faces. Representatives from other species were also present, curious to witness what was about to unfold. Princess Sarilith stepped forward and addressed the chamber. Her voice carried across the room, steady and strong. She described the sabotage attempt, the rapid decline in orbit, and the danger faced by the station. She explained how human officers, without being ordered, had taken action to protect everyone on board. She confirmed that without the humans' intervention, the station would have fallen before evacuation could be completed. The chamber fell into complete silence. The Virelian nobility were not known for showing emotion, but even they could not hide their reactions. Some looked ashamed that they had doubted humans so quickly. Others looked thoughtful, as if reassessing everything they had believed. A few seemed inspired. Sarilith looked at Marcus and asked him to step forward. He did so quietly. She told the chamber that humans had not saved the station for political gain or reward. They did it because helping others was their nature. They did it because they saw lives in danger and believed those lives mattered. She then turned to the council and explained that this was the kind of ally the Virelian Empire needed, a species driven not by arrogance, but by responsibility. An older counselor rose slowly. He was one of the traditionalists who had earlier doubted humanity's worth. His voice was softer than usual when he spoke. He admitted that he had believed humans were reckless and emotional. But he now understood that those same emotions could be transformed into strength and loyalty. He bowed slightly toward Marcus, and the gesture carried great weight. Such a bow from a Virelian elder was almost never given to outsiders. Other council members followed. Some acknowledged their change of perspective. Some thanked the humans directly. Even a representative from another species spoke, openly praising the humans for their actions. The atmosphere of the chamber shifted. Humanity was not being treated as newcomers anymore. Humanity was being treated as equals. Sarilith then made the most important declaration of the summit. She announced that she would support a formal alliance with Earth. Not a treaty of subservience. Not an agreement of patronage. A true alliance based on mutual respect. She looked directly at Marcus when she said it. Her golden eyes held no trace of doubt. The council was stunned for a moment. Then murmurs of approval spread across the room. The vote was taken, and one by one, councilors confirmed their support. The final tally was unanimous. Humanity had won something rare. Recognition from the oldest ruling body in the sector. Not through threats, not through negotiation, but through action and character. The voting process was recorded into the official archives, and the council chamber lights changed to signify a new era in diplomatic history. When the vote ended, Sarilith turned once again to Marcus. She addressed him using his full title, including the long honorific phrases of the human diplomatic service. Everyone in the chamber reacted with surprise. The princess had just returned the earlier respect he had shown her. It was a gesture so significant that many counselors would remember this moment for years. Marcus bowed his head and thanked the princess and the council. His voice was formal, but warm. He explained that humanity did not seek to dominate the stars. Humans only wanted the chance to stand among them. He ended his brief words with a simple promise humanity would honor the trust that had been given to them. The session ended after the alliance documents began preparation. Papers and digital records flowed through the council assistants' hands. Stamps, signatures, and seals were added as the legal framework took shape. It would take several days to finalize all details, but the important step had already been taken. The galaxy would remember this as the day humans stepped fully onto the interstellar stage. As the chamber emptied, Sarilith and Marcus walked together down a quiet corridor. The window beside them showed the stars stretching forever into the distance. The princess paused and looked out at the sky. She admitted something she had never said to any outsider before. She told Marcus that she had doubted humans in the beginning, not out of malice, but out of long cultural habit. She had grown up believing greatness was tied to age. But humans had taught her something new. She now understood that greatness could also be shaped by effort, courage, and will. Marcus did not boast or take pride in her words. He simply smiled and said that humans were still learning, and they probably always would be. That was how they preferred it. Sarilith found that answer genuine and wise. She realized then why humanity had risen so quickly. They were never satisfied with where they stood. They always sought the next step. Before they parted ways, Marcus said he hoped their two peoples would walk into the future together. Sarilith agreed. She believed that working with humans would make her own empire stronger, more awake, and more alive than it had been in centuries. As Marcus returned to his team, and Sarilith returned to her royal duties, both knew that a new path had opened. The galaxy had changed. A young species had stepped into history, and the oldest empire in the stars had noticed. Humanity did not take their place in the galaxy because someone handed it to them. They earned it. And from this day forward, no one would ever underestimate them again.